Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Vic's Garage. It's been a while since I've had a video up in regards to the charger and progress. A lot of you are probably thinking this project has died, another DIYer who didn't finish. Sorry to disappoint you, project's not dead, it's still going, things have happened, it's just been busy. So I'm going to give you a quick update video of everything that's been done to this car up until now, because I missed recording a bunch of stuff because it was just busy working, and I want to get everyone caught up to where we're at and what's next that's got to happen. So let's get into it and take a look. So I am going to apologize. I've had to do a lot of stuff around the house, been working on my deck, other car maintenance, oil changes, just routine stuff. Had to work a lot. So this did take a bit of a back burner. But as you can tell just from looking at it from here, it's really different from the last video, which I think was me finishing up the floor pan in the back of the car. So let's go through everything, talk about everything that's been done that wasn't covered specifically in a video, get everyone caught up, and then we'll talk about what's next. Okay, so we're looking at the front. We can see a lot of the sheet metal's all clipped in place and stuff. But before we get into that, let's talk about the front frame rails, because I know I didn't do a video on how we installed the front frame rails. So I'm going to give you a quick 2-second overview of how we did it. So essentially what we did was we used my original K-frame here and we bolted it up to the new rails, because I was going to automatically set my width, at least at the front end. Okay, so now we know that the front rails are square to where they need to be. Then what we did is essentially we centered them on the transmission cross member, sure they were equal on both sides, and then welded them in place. So then after we did that, they were just tacked in place roughly. We checked them with the datum gauges that we made, and you'll see that in the previous one of my previous videos, how we DIY made our datum gauges. We checked them front to back. When we were good to go, or when we knew they were good to go, or they looked like they were good to go and the measurements were good, we welded those all in. So if you look at the frame chart we have here, it's a little messy because it's been actually in the garage, in the car, on the floor, getting dirty. If you look at the frame chart, and I know what some of you are thinking, are like, well, Vic, you set the front because you put the cross member in, but that doesn't necessarily mean you set this right. Well, they don't have a measurement for that. So the best we could have did was essentially center that. Now, because they have the measurement for the transmission cross member width and the width of the body of the car, but they don't have a measurement from these holes here on the edges. So that's why we went with just the centering it where they laid as they came out. So moving along to the back, they were a little more straightforward. The measurements were there for the widths and all that stuff. And then obviously the shackle mounts have to go up against the rocker. So we were literally able to just check all those measurements with the tram gauge, make sure the heights were good, which we had to play with a little bit just to get them where we wanted them, and then they were burnt in. On top of that, Simon, if you remember the gentleman I'm working with, the more experienced individual, has made his own tool, which I kind of wish I got a photo of, but essentially it bolted to the shackle mounts on both sides, and it gave us an additional point of measure to just make sure things were square. So that way we can make sure that when it was all done, it wasn't going to ride cockeyed down the road. As you can see, we had to put some bracing to hold the rails in place. So that'll be coming out soon. We also had these like a ratchet strap to kind of pull things a bit, but it's all set where it needed to be. So now it's good to go. And once I we burned the rear seat pan in, so that's going to basically hold them in the front, and the trunk pan will be going in soon. So back up to the front again now. We've discussed how we did all the rails in a nutshell, how we're pretty confident they're good to go. Now at all the upper metal. So none of this has been welded in yet, with the exception of the shock towers have been essentially tacked in place, but not fully welded in yet. Bunch of spot welds you'll see on them when we look at it a bit more closely. We have to weld all those up, but they're tacked in place. So the only measurement we had for the entire front end, essentially, when we started roughing all these in place, was the cam plate It's the measurement in between these two, and it measures 30 inches on my body diagram there. Now we checked that on several different cars, and it was all plus or minus a 1/4 inch. So right now we have it. We got it to 30 and 1/4. So it's a little bit on the outside of what the specifications say, but my friend with a 71 was 30 and 1/4. We had a 70 CUDA we checked it with, and it was just over 30 inches as well. So we're happy that that's going to be fine. I mean, from everyone I've talked to and everyone I've heard, they essentially say that the 1/4 inch is kind of the tolerance range, plus or minus a bit. So we did our best. We pulled these in a bit, but you can't pull them too much because then you really change the geometry, right? So we got them at 30 and 1/4. It's all basically based off bolting this K-frame, which is set this width. I mean, I think we're okay, given that we've talked to several different people with 2, 3 different cars we had measured with, and that is pretty much where they all were. I didn't get one back that said it was exactly 30 inches. So we're happy with that. Also, in regards to these clamshells on the front, shock tower mounts, there is play going front to back with these. And it was a fair amount. So the way we made sure that we were happy with this location was I have the original ones on my original frame rail still. And as you can tell, I cut the rad support, so they gave me the measurement from here to here. And we got that to where we wanted it. Right. Again, there was only so much you could do with them because with the way the inner fender was, it has to fit in there. But there was still surprisingly a fair amount of room front and back. So we did that measurement to make sure we were happy with their location. In regards to all the inner fenders and stuff, this is where it got a little tricky because there is no measurements. So we had to get cars that we knew were fairly square and people we knew with them to go out of their way and measure it. And if you're one of the people who responded and helped me with getting those measurements and you're watching this video right now, I want to thank you a lot. That came a long way. I know Mopar Nut was one of my friends. A couple other people got these measurements for me, a gentleman in Windsor, and his name escapes me as I'm doing this video right now, but we've talked a lot on Facebook Messenger, so thank you too. I hope to see your car one day because you're further ahead. But we got several different measurements, and the ones we used the most was this overall length from the front of the rad support to this stud. And then we did the diagonal across measurement. So the reason we went with those two measurements really is because that's how like the inner fender is going to sit. Or sorry, the fender is going to sit like basically on this stud and bolt along here to the front, right? So if we could make sure that was square in those directions, it's going to be pretty square the whole front end when it's all assembled. So the way we measured it was just essentially hooking the tape measure on top of this stud, going right across to the corner, and that was 70 and 3/16. Now again, there was variability between the cars we talked to. Most cars weren't perfectly square. There was plus or minus a 1/4 inch between a lot of the different cars. And then depending how they measured it, the other issues too is we originally started using these holes along the inner fender, and these aren't necessarily perfect. And then they're going to vary between the originals and the new ones. So that's why we went with a fixed point like this stud and all the way to the corner. Anyways, 70 and 3/16 was the diagonal. We're bang on both sides there, so that is square that direction. And then the overall length from the stud to the front is 84.5 inches. Okay, so we got that the same. So the front end is square as I think we can get it, doing it ourselves like this in the garage, and as good as based off the measurements I've gotten from everybody else. So I'm happy with that. So this whole front end now essentially, oh sorry, and we did do one more measurement. We measured the bolt holes for the rads. So because this rad support, the upright, that has play to shift it this way. So we made sure we had the measurements from diagonal from this one to the front there, that one to over here. We got those. I'm just gonna have those come across the screen because I don't remember them off the top of my head. And we made sure that was good too. So now this whole front end is basically ready to weld in. I just gotta get a hole punch. I just bought one, 5/16 pneumatic hole punch. I'll probably do a quick review video on that. I'm gonna punch all my holes, weld this whole front end in, and it's good to go. We also, obviously before welding everything in permanently, you can see it's all clecoed. We test fit the fenders and the doors. We looked at the body lines and we're happy with it. Might need a shim here and there. Obviously, there was several shims when I took it apart, but we're happy with the way the fenders sat and we're happy with the door gaps. We'll take a look at those now before we move on to the back. Okay, so passenger side door here. I'll tell you right now, you can see here, this is a little bit low, right? But my pins are sagging and I have room to adjust the striker because I take this off and I can lift the door. It's got play in the up and down direction. So we can move that up. And I also have the replacement pins. So I'm not too worried about that. It's a little low there. And you can see how that translates. But this looks pretty good overall. I mean, given what we've been through and what we did. A little tight down there. And as I lift that, I think that's going to open up. And the same thing on the bottom. It's a little, not tight, but just a tad less than this side here. But again, I want you to see, I don't know if you can really tell, but there's a fair bit here. I can get that up. So once I replace the pins and then adjust the striker, I think that's going to be okay. Okay, moving along to the driver's side. Sorry, a bit of a glare here. I'll shift this way. Here's that top gap. If anything, it's a little more proud on the door side, which is what you want, at least with this, because the door's painted and this isn't filled and primed, painted and all that stuff. So this is probably perfect right where it is. You can see, and you guys got a little bit of a proud bump here. You can feel that. And this gap is much better. Not that the other one's bad, but it's pretty consistent all the way down and then all the way along the bottom. To the front here. A little awkward to show you this one because it's against my wall. I don't have as much room, but that gap is much better. So we're pretty much bang on here. Okay, so now we've moved around to the back end of the car in the trunk area and we test fitted the pan. So like I said earlier, our rear rails were set. We were happy. We checked everything was square. We test fitted this rear pan. It fits well up and along the rear seat pan. It looks good here. Obviously, I've cut some of these lips off when we were removing stuff, but it looks like it's where it needs to be in regards to the wheel wells. And then this is going to get modified when we do the mini tub. So it's going to get cut here regardless, but this looks good. Looks good on this side. Lined up well with our rear cross member. So we've clecoed it into what we believe is going to be its final position. So I got, again, same as the front, mark it, drill all the holes, punch all the holes, and we're ready to weld this in. I'm reusing my original support braces here, the trunk support pans where the gas tank hangs off of. You can see they're actually pretty, just a lot of surface rust. They're in good shape. So I'm going to have to just fix the lips on those, clean them up, and then we will use those. Okay, so that is everything we've done to get you up to date on where we're at with this project. So if you thought it was dead, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but it's not. It's moving ahead, but it's slowed down a little bit. We're going to be moving ahead. So I'm going to be doing these next. So what's the next step then? I think for me, the next thing I'm going to do is the front end. I'm going to weld this all up because I'm happy where this is. and it's a big step. We knock this right off off my plate and move forward with the back end after. So the next thing we'll be doing is I'll disassemble everything. I'll drill all my holes, punch all my holes in it, mock it back up again. The clecos will help me line it all up. I'll double check my measurements. When I'm happy with them, we'll start welding everything in place. And then, yeah, move on to the back. So now I'll be able to start fresh, be able to start getting some videos up on a consistent basis, hopefully soon. I think we're gonna get back at it early July, mid-July. I just got a few more things I gotta take care of before then. So then we'll get that ball rolling, and hopefully, fingers crossed, I don't wanna get too ahead of myself, but if I can have the vast majority of this metal work done by the end of the year, I am gonna be very happy with the progress on the car. I mean, I've set no timelines on this because I didn't want to disappoint myself. I'm not experienced. I'm getting help. I'm at the mercy of product availability and just a whole bunch of things at once. So if I can get this metal work done, then that's a lot, in my opinion, for a DIYer to get done. And it's a big step forward. So that's the goal. I'm finally setting a timeline on that. I'm going to try to have this metal work done by the end of the year. But we're going to get this front end done soon, get the trunk done soon, and then move on. So that's it for this one, guys. Now you're up to date. Thanks for watching. If you haven't, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell, and I'll see you at the next one. Take it easy.